So hello everybody, and welcome to tonight's event from Bombs to Bracelets. See, I can't even talk, right? The Article 22 event. We are so excited today to have Elizabeth with us and Catherine from Article 22 and sharing their story about how Article 22 came about. But before we get started, I kind of want to give you a little background about LHF and the event itself and what this event is going to help fund and what it's going to benefit. So if you are new to LHF, welcome. So LHF stands for the Lao Heritage Foundation. We are a nonprofit, a 501c3. We are located in Virginia. And we've been around the block a few times. We've been here since 2004. So we have a mission to promote, preserve, and transmit Lao culture through the arts. Our most recent events and activities, we do a lot more with children nowadays. So we do teach traditional Lao music. We do teach traditional dancing, culture, and the arts. And we also host many different events regarding Lao culture and Lao history and the make. So this is one of them. So we're really excited about that. And today is actually even more exciting that today, if you don't know, is National Children's Day in Laos. And look, Arena's little one's here. Hi. So we are celebrating National Children's Day by having this event because this event will benefit the children of Laos. So we are hoping to open, well, actually not hoping, we are going to open another campsite in Laos. So besides having camp all over the United States, we have about 10 different sites across the US. We also have some in Laos. So we have been in Luang Prabang for the last 3 years, teaching traditional Lao music, and it's all provided to the children over there free. We work with the Culture and Children Cultural Center in Laos, and then also the orphanage in Laos. So we provide trained teachers as well as instruments and the whole entire program. So we are planning to have that program in the southern part of Laos, in Attabu, which is, if you don't know, Laos is the farthest south you could go. They said you can go any more south than Attabu, right? So we are really excited about that. And if you don't know much about Laos, as the farther south you go, the more needy it is. So there's lots of resources, less attention to those areas. And we really hope to go down there and make some difference in connecting and impacting some lives down south in Attabu. So we are really, really excited to have that opportunity, and we already have made contact. So the funding from today, the donation from today will go directly into that program, and we are projecting the program to start as early as the summer of 2015. So 2014 will be the groundwork, and 2015 will be the opening of that program. So we are really excited, and the program will benefit largely the area that was affected. If you heard the news in 2018 from the large damage from the burst of the dams in Attabu. So that's the area where we are most impacted, and as far as the children and the community, and we wanted to build something positive in that area. So that's where the camps will be held. Okay. So we're excited to have you here. And so I would like to introduce to you our moderator for the evening, Lulu, or Mary Louise, who will be moderating our event tonight. She is also one of our board members for LHF. We are really grateful to have her to agree to moderate tonight. And then we will have some really wonderful conversations as the evening goes. If you have questions, as you come up with questions, please put them in the chat. We'll also be providing information for you throughout the evening through the chat as well. So go ahead and take it away, Lulu.
Thank you, Tech. We're really just very excited that everyone's here and everyone's part of this conversation from bombs to bracelets, and it's the origin stories of Article 22. We have with us Elizabeth Suda, who's one of the co-founders. I'll have most of the conversation will be around the origins, the impact, and the product. And Catherine Walker is also with us of Article 22, and she's based in Northern Virginia as well. So I look forward to knowing more about Article 22. And Elizabeth, are you you're all set? We can start.
Yes.
Okay.
Why not start with a quick clip of someone telling the story about Article 22 that many of you may recognize. So you can play that tick. Do you have the video tick? Is it okay? Okay, cool.
I actually just found out today that these earrings are from a brand called Article22, and they're made from upcycled bombs that were collected from the Vietnam War shrapnel and then converted into jewelry.
Wow.
Earrings. Yeah, I just found this out, and it's like, it's such a lovely idea to turn something so negative into something beautiful.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Wow, good for you.
Well, you know.
Now I want I'm going to buy Portia some grenade earrings.
Amazing.
So that was Emma Watson wearing Article 22 earrings. It was the very first pair of earrings we had ever produced. And by a crazy chance, we received an email from her stylist saying that she was looking to wear sustainable jewelry. And we thought that the email was spam. Quite clearly, we thought that this was not a real invitation to dress Emma Watson, but it turns out that it was. And she was looking to buy what she was looking to wear what she qualified as sustainable fashion for her Beauty and the Beast press tour that came out when she was Belle in Disney. And she wanted to leave a legacy during this press tour that was more than just about promoting the film. She wore many, many different, very small and larger designers that were proving that you could create something beautiful out of material that was unusual, that was organic, that was upcycled. So I want to thank you for inviting me here to tell my part of the story about how Article 22 came to be, how Emma Watson ended up wearing our jewelry. And that really all starts with inspiration that I gathered from a rural mountain village in Laos. You might be wondering what it is that brought me to Laos in the first place, and I'm happy to take you through a quick time capsule. So as far as the origin goes, you know, I studied history and art history. I was a liberal arts kid, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. And by chance, my first job was actually in fashion at Coach. And so I was in the merchandising department, and I was learning about the entirety of the business, touching everything from design to sales to quality assurance to the product that came to, you know, the Madison Avenue store from thousands of miles overseas. And it really got me thinking a lot about that word I used earlier, sustainability, and specifically in relation to fashion. What was sustainable fashion? And so it turned out that after 2 very good years of what I call a little mini MBA at Coach, I became a little bit restless, and I really wanted to understand what fashion could do to improve. How could fashion be more green, more kind to the people that made it? You know, everyone was starting to hear about rivers running red in China and various human rights abuses. And I wanted to understand what that actually meant. And so through a lot of beautiful internet surfing during and before and after my lunch hour at Coach, I happened upon this landlocked country that I had hardly ever heard of, and discovered that there was an incredible heritage of natural dyeing and handloom weaving, as you know very well, Lulu, and all of you do here. And I was so inspired by what I saw there, just by looking at intriguing pictures on the internet. And I decided to sell all my Coach stock, pack up my bags, and save my pennies and go to Laos. And that's exactly what I did. So you might wonder what it is that brought me to create the jewelry, because of course my initial intention was textiles. Now, that was a little bit of chance. Vientiane is a beautiful, intimate capital where if you smile, people will talk to you. And that's something that was really, really nice to discover coming from slightly more isolating urban jungle of New York City. And so little by little, I met many different people, including an incredibly inspiring woman who had started her own textile business back in the 90s when Laos was just starting to open up. And she warmly invited me into her home, and I volunteered my meager skills, and of course ended up getting so much more out of the experience than I possibly could have given her. But through a chain of meeting people, I basically ended up consulting for a Swiss NGO called Helvetas, which brought me to this rural mountain village in Laos, in Sianquang in particular, which at the time I didn't realize what, whoops, I have a child here, I'm sorry. One moment.
No, let's say hello. I have to say,
When Teak can jump in and start singing for us.
So I also wanted to say that, thank you so much for everybody for coming. And yes, of course, it is Children's Day. You can't have an event without children on Children's Day, right? So definitely so.
yeah, it was perfect actually, because it's a reminder of like what's important and what needs our attention. And yeah, Elizabeth, you were continuing about, remind us, what year did you go there and how long were you there? And
Yes.
it was through this organization that you found your way to what became like your destiny, right?
Crazy to think of that, exactly. So it was 2008 actually, and it was before President Obama had been elected. It was September. At that point, the kind of financial crisis in New York was just starting to hit, and it was a strange time, but also in a way an opportune time. And I end up going to Sianquang, a village called Ban Napia, where the goal of Swiss NGO Helvetas was to have me help them assess what sort of crafts they could invest in for a future local tourist market. And their interest was in particular textiles. And people were really interested at the time in my background because it was unusual to go without any sort of background in development or maybe connection to Laos. I was coming from a totally different perspective, which I guess you could call a business perspective, but I was a total business novice, I have to admit. But I felt there was something wrong in fashion. And so people were in the development space were curious, like what could make sense in terms of matching these incredible local crafts with a more global market, even if that market is a local tourist market. How could we appeal to people who are going to be coming more and more to Sianquang because of the beautiful Plain of Jars, which will eventually become a World Heritage Site? And it was so gratifying to see when that actually happened 10 plus years later. It did take a long time. But so, this NGO, Helvetas, was actually tasked with a completely different mission. Their mission was to bring sustainable energy to 4 different villages. And they had done that successfully through a public-private partnership that was focusing on harnessing the local rivers and creating hydropower. So they were just then trying to take the next step and help these communities use this new energy in a way that could help them potentially generate income, but again, doing something that was nascent and local to the communities. So I found this very inspiring as far as my perspective, learning about what is an example of a very good approach to, quote unquote, development work. It's not about changing behaviors. It's about recognizing incredible resources and talent that people have already. And so it was saying, okay, if now they have an extra hour or two in their day because of electricity and a light bulb, could they be weaving for a local tourist market? Well, I did this report, but at the same time, I couldn't help myself. I said, what other crafts are made in this village? And I look forward to showing you in a few minutes the very humble 10-minute documentary that we made back in 2010. A woman grabbed my hand and brought me over to a shed that was filled with scrap metal. And on one particular piece that she recognized was clearly written in English. It said rocket mortar. And suddenly things clicked for me, and I realized this was an American bomb. And she brought me over to an earthen kiln where another artisan was actually melting this aluminum material down and making soup spoons. And the soup spoon was the very soup spoon I had eaten my noodle soup from in Pontsavan that morning. And I felt this kind of heavy weight, realizing that that spoon was made from a bomb that was dropped by my country. And suddenly everything really clicked in a way that it hadn't in Vientiane, where I spent most of my time during my 6 months. Xianguang is one of the most heavily bombed provinces, as you all very likely know. It's not along the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but it was a main area of the Pathet Lao. And so there are a lot of unexploded and exploded bombs there. And so I was so inspired by the fact that they had, it turns out, since the 1970s, been making soup spoons to quite literally feed their local community. And I thought, almost in an instant, if they can make spoons, they can make bracelets. We need to make a bracelet and buy back the bombs, both, tangibly, physically, and then more figuratively. And so we'll get to the point where I share a little bit about how we structured Article 22 as a company versus a nonprofit and the impact that we make. But very critically, one aspect, in addition to raising awareness about the secret war and awareness of the legacy of 80 million unexploded bombs, is the fact that every single piece also contributes a very humble amount to help Minds Advisory Group clear some of those 80 million bombs, so that there is a virtuous circle that's created. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit. But there is impact that we make in other ways, and the village is an exciting tourist destination. And although Swiss NGO Helvetas's original vision of, creating, a haven for textile lovers didn't quite come to fruition, I feel that we've left a positive mark by creating this jewelry, which does attract people to come see the artisans in their own homes, creating this incredible work in addition to the spoons. So it could be a good time to maybe play the 10-minute documentary.
Yeah, I agree. It's really just hearing, Elizabeth, your story, it's just very powerful, and that spark that something changed, something shifted for you, that is sustaining you and Article 22 and the village and the villagers are there, and other organizations like Minds Advisory Group. And yeah, the documentary you made, you were part of making it and filming it, yeah?
Yes, yes. It was
So
actually,
it'd be-
sorry, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. No, it would be wonderful to show up because it just visually shows everything that you're talking about. It's
Yeah.
beautifully done.
Thank you, thank you. It was made in 2010, and that is actually where we met one of the, very important collaborators that we work with today, which is Legacies of War, which you've surely all encountered and heard of. And I was so inspired by, Chanapa and her activism and advocacy. And, we were very fortunate to make this short piece at the International Convention on Cluster Munitions. So you'll see a little bit of that. And just so you have an idea of what that was Laos's very first international event where there were many, many people from many countries. And it makes sense that it would be hosted in a place that was so severely affected by cluster munitions. So with that, we can watch what we call Buying Back the Bombs.
In 2010, filmmaker Sam Rowland and designer Elizabeth Suda
I apologize for the technical difficulty. Hold on a second. It's coming.
I can say in the meantime that this was funded by Kickstarter, and I'm not sure if you're all familiar with that. Kickstarter is a platform like Indiegogo that's about funding creative projects. And one funny story is one day I get a phone call from a man with a British accent named Richard from Big Balls Films. Big Balls Films. And I'm thinking that this is a big joke. And Richard from Big Balls Films is telling me that he wants to make a documentary with Article 22 about the origin story of our jewelry. So this is that documentary. And it turns out that sometimes it's worth picking up a phone call and worth taking a listen, even if you're a little bit skeptical, because Richard from Big Balls Films was completely legitimate.
In 2010, filmmaker Sam Rowland and designer Elizabeth Suda had a simple idea: to make a short film about a bracelet made in rural Laos. They created an online funding appeal and enlisted the help of family and friends. 40 days and $7,500 later, they arrived in the heart of Southeast Asia. Project Peace Bomb pairs artisans who melt bomb metal into bracelets with the distribution network of Article 22, a sustainable fashion company. They call it Buying Back the Bombs. The story of the bracelet is just the beginning. Behind it is the legacy of a secret war. Between 1964 and 1973, the equivalent of one B-52 bomb load showered upon Laos every 8 minutes, 24 hours a day for 9 years. It was a secret to nearly everyone, except those whose lives it changed forever.
I find the Lao people among the gentlest of any people in the world.
I'm married, I have children, I have grandchildren, and when I go out to the provinces and I see the children, and you can think of what they have to deal with day to day. Obviously, they're oblivious to it because they're just children, but to have my grandchildren in this situation, I would not stand for it, as I don't think you would.
They value personal relationships and nature more than things, power, money, and technology. I still can't understand how the richest of the species and most technologically advanced of the species could torment the nicest people on Earth, the poorest people on Earth, for no real reason.
When asked about the secret air war in Laos, the senior leaders in America denied that it was happening.
Even I didn't know, living 200 miles away down in the capital city, the bombing was in Pathala. I didn't know about it, let alone Congress of the American people back in America.
The idea from the U.S. forces was to take out everything, scorched earth policy, the villagers, everyone who might be there because they could be an insurgent, they might be a North Vietnamese soldier.
And so the main people we were burning and burying alive and slowly suffocating to death were grandmothers, children, and civilians.
When the planes coming, drop the bomb, and they hide, they sleep on the field. And then after that, the planes go up, and then they would continue to plant rice.
To know that this country was bombed more per capita than any other country in the world leaves me with some conflict. I want there to be peace in the region forever, and yet I realize I was part of a society that waged enormous destruction on this part of the world.
It shook me up on the deepest possible level because it meant everything I had been taught and everything I believed about America wasn't true.
Who were we to believe? Were we to believe some obscure reporter who said this was happening in Laos? Or do you believe the President of the United States and the senators and the Congress people who bought into the party line?
By the mid-1970s, the U.S. had dropped over 200 million tons of bombs. 1 out of every 3 failed to detonate.
Armies historically don't clean up their own messes. They don't rebuild homes or houses. They don't take care of the wounded, and they don't clean up their landmine messes.
Unexploded ordnance, or UXO, continues to affect the people of Laos.
UXO impacts negatively in so many different ways. It will not allow poverty to be reduced. It restricts people to eat, food security. There's obviously the threat of maiming. If the father loses a leg farming, income generation, food generation is gone for that family.
He was 13 years old. He went to correct discriminators with his teacher and 4 villagers. They went to the forest and they tried to take apart the bombs, and the bomb exploded, and 5 of them died. Yeah, got injured his eyes and also his cheeks.
Time frame to make sure all of this is gone. I would not want to hazard a guess. It could be decades, it could be a century.
In my lifetime, it's not likely to happen because there are so many of them.
What most horrified me about what happened to the people of Plain of Jars is that they were not considered as human beings.
In 2010, the U.S. spent between $5 and $7 million clearing UXO in Laos. The same year, it announced its plan to spend between $110 and $145 million on a new embassy in Vientiane, the capital of Laos. The first convention on cluster munitions was held in Laos in November 2010. England, France, Germany, and Japan have joined the convention and ratified a treaty banning the use of these bombs. But the US, China, Brazil, and other powerful nations still have not.
I think we're a very beautiful species. I think we're capable of tremendous love, tremendous compassion, great beauty, and I'd like to see that persist.
In 1975, a lone man from Huphan province journeyed to the Plain of Jars, a landscape covered with ancient stones and scarred with thousands of bomb craters. He settled in a new village and taught one of his neighbors how to transform bomb scrap metal into aluminum spoons. In 2009, Elizabeth Suda of Article 22 developed the concept of the bracelet with the Napier spoon makers and a Swiss nonprofit called Helvetas.
Everything was destroyed by bombs.
By bombs, the houses or everything destroyed.
They were already doing this. This is their own innovation through their own initiative. But the spoons weren't a product that I felt could be sold on the international market. It's been a really positive experience, and we're talking about other types of products beyond the bracelet that could work for both the local market and the international market.
Helvetas and the Mines Advisory Group conduct trainings to ensure villagers are educated about bombs and safety.
We know that practice will go on, so we're trying to make it as safe as possible.
With each bracelet purchased, Project Peace Bomb donates funds to cover the cost of clearing roughly 3 square meters of land. Additional donations go into a central development fund managed by the community with the help of Helvetas. So far, villagers have used funds to pay for electricity in communal areas and provided microloans to help families set up businesses.
So he really hope that you and the project will support villagers in the future.
When a negative can be turned into a positive, it's the yin and the yang.
It's another solution to a problem that we have. And I love the Buy Back the Bombs. It gives people that chance to make some money, feed their family, maybe put them into school, get them an education, further themselves. And it all comes from something that has caused the problem. And that's the key thing.
I think what we should have done is clear, and what is less clear is the path ahead, and that we can forge together collectively.
Call you from my hotel room. I'm sitting on the hallway floor. I know that we are so tired. My phone run is expired.
You only call me when you're drunk. I can tell it by your voice. It's the only time that you open up to me and tell me that you love me. The first thing that I do is throw my arms around you
And never let go.
and never let go.
So I don't know if you saw in the credits, but I was telling the truth. It said produced by Big Balls Films and then my name. So.
Elizabeth, that was such a powerful film. And, you know, your last line, what we should have done is clear, and what is not clear is the path ahead, but what we can do is forge that together, which sort of goes into impact, you know, which has really just been such a core thing with your mission. And has the impact changed over the many years that you've been working, or how does it look now? Or, you know, could you talk a little bit about that? I know it's such an important thing for you.
Absolutely. So partnership is really the first aspect of impact. It's knowing what you don't know and embracing that, and really, you know, finding expert partners to collaborate with. And it was something that I really appreciated going back to my experience with Helvetas, which was that, you know, they recognized their expertise was in that case, you know, sustainable energy systems, but they knew that maybe, you know, getting a product to appeal to a global market wasn't their forte. And so that was a really great first entry point for me into even thinking about how to structure Article 22 once Article 22 was more than an idea on a napkin. And it might be a good moment for me to say Article 22 is named after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is about everyone's right to social, economic, and cultural security and the free development of personality. And I'll actually pop that in the chat. It's a beautiful article, and it touches on what I think is the basis of sustainability and the basis of really trying to solve any issue that we have as a society, as a single humanity going forward. And I think there are a few things that I love about it and that celebrate the notion of partnership and the way that we implement it on a day-to-day basis. And that is, the realization of social, economic, and cultural security through national effort and international cooperation. It's calling out right there that we have to work together. And the other aspect that I love about it is that it says these rights are indispensable for dignity and the free development of personality. And I meet these artisans who are transforming American bombs and other scrap metal into soup spoons. And for lack of a better term, I'm completely and utterly blown away. I mean, they're taking something that has devastated their community and making it into something that's useful and that's rebuilding their lives and that's feeding their community, which apparently is a very important part of being Lao, which I love to be fed. And at the same time, welcoming me, a strange American, into the community and being open-minded to talk to me as a consultant, and now, of course, after all of these years, business partner. And so that goes back to the fact of partnership. It really is an idea that came from this incredible community and has been passed down over the generations. And it was really moving to me to realize that, artisans who were born in the 1980s, as I was, were, faced with this legacy of unexploded ordnance and were, again, doing something about it. Whereas my life had been very different. I didn't even learn about the US legacy in Laos because it was a secret. My history books didn't share that information. And so I felt very inspired by their ingenuity. And it was really a matter of, okay, if you can make spoons, can you make bracelets? And as you'll learn a little later in a wonderful clip from the BBC, which interviews one of our partners, they were a bit skeptical at first, but we'll get to that later. Really, the point about partnership is that, it's a partnership with the artisan families that we work with. It's a partnership with Mind Advisory Group, MAG, who is an entity that, as you saw in the video, is providing education and training to the community. They're going in to clear their land. Unfortunately, the village is still contaminated. And what's so incredible is that we've got this virtuous circle where, the jewelry that's created from this devastation is made by artisans who are essentially like raising funds through the jewelry sales to have land cleared in their own community and beyond. So it's we often think of vicious circles, but this is a virtuous circle. And the other aspect of impact that we don't necessarily talk about as much is the fact that every single order that we place from the village within the village is also including an additional 10% donation to the Village Development Fund, because there are about 300 people in the village and are anywhere from 10 to 15 families that are actually making the jewelry. So we recognize that, not every family is an artisan family. We wanted to be able to contribute to the community at large. And so the Village Development Fund is really about that. If at Lao New Year they want to buy a case of beer, maybe that gets in there occasionally. But more exciting things are, tangible results, like the roof on the community center. Or one year there were a lot of tourists and the villagers were really frustrated. Not that there were tourists, but just that there wasn't a direction for the bands to go. So, we funded the building of parking signs that were written in both English and in Lao. So the Village Development Fund is about just benefiting the whole community. And then what's new and Lulu exciting, as you mentioned, is that our impact has evolved over time. And one thing that is new as of 2020 is that we now also created a health and education fund. So as an additional 10% is donated to the Village Development Fund, another 10% is allocated to this health and development fund. And, it came as much from COVID, not that the village had specific problems with that, but it came from this realization that, okay, American healthcare is in shambles and Lao health insurance isn't in existence. And so on occasion, things have happened over time where, Article 22 has donated to individual families, and we realized that there was a need to have this fund, which is essentially a savings account that families can draw on in times of need. So that's a really nice development since, I guess the idea came about in 2020, and now 2021 is when it was first implemented. So impact is core to what we do. It is very much the reason for being for Article 22. But jewelry and beauty is a way of translating the message and the story of the jewelry, this story of transformation, which is one that comes from the community itself. And it's also a mechanism for making the impact. So,
yeah, I really appreciate all that you're saying, and I imagine a lot of people who are listening as well are just very inspired by what you saw, what you're doing, partnerships, the impact, and just leading again into that whole idea of transformation. Here's this, it was just happening in the village, it's happening as a community, and then it's sort of, I almost feel like that the energy that's in the bracelets, that it's in the jewelry, is then transmitted. That idea is really meaningful in all those pieces, right? Perhaps you can talk more about that, how customers who you interact with see their own stories of transformation as well in the pieces. That would be really wonderful to hear more about.
yes, absolutely. I think that, Kat is, after we play the BBC quote, I would love to hear, a few anecdotes from Kat, who's in the DC area, who speaks to a wide range of people every year. But what I can say is that, art has always been a medium for, beauty, but also for confrontation and communication and conversation. And I think there is this energy in the jewelry. There is something special about it, something different. It doesn't tarnish. It's got this signature matte finish, which is usually silver. Now we do finish it in a gold anodized color. And people are often commenting on it without actually having any inkling what that story of transformation is. And it becomes this tool to talk about a lesser known part of history. I mean, as much as I'm so happy that President Obama went to Laos And, legacies of war got him to commit $40 million for 3 years. And now they're at a record $45 million a year, which is just an incredible achievement from the 1.5 to 7 million back in 2010. The jewelry is this entry point into what is a lesser known part of history, and it's a surprise at a cocktail party to talk about something like this. And so, Catherine and I will share just like a few anecdotes from customers who have given us feedback about the fact that the jewelry is inspiring to them because they know of its origin story and the impact it makes, but then also they have a very personal reason for making the purchase. I think maybe it would be nice to play the BBC clip, which is just 5 minutes. And something that's really important to us is, this storytelling element through the jewelry. But when we have the opportunity to tell our own story in our own way, as we did in this unique situation through the documentary in 2010, we've always done our best to ensure that the people who geniusly invented this process and who live it and live in Bad Nappia are able to have a platform themselves. And so it's a point of pride that the BBC has interviewed them. We have a very prominent sustainable podcast host who has done the same thing, who traveled to Laos and created an incredible piece, interviewing many, many different artisans in the village. So this BBC piece is a notable moment for Samjit, who you will meet here, who was born a year before I was, who told his story, and he's become a friend. He's fortunately for me, someone who does speak a little bit of English in the village. So I wish my Lao was better than it was, but I always end up saying really dirty words when I try. So I'm convinced I'm being baited, but no, it's a lovely piece, and I think, Tik, if you'd like to play that.
There are 300 families in the village, and most of them have at least one spoon maker in their ranks. This is one of them.
Hello, my name is Samjit Vanzavat. I'm a spoon maker.
Every time I try to make it bigger, it doesn't show. Okay, so I guess I'll stick with the little one. So hold on one second.
This will be listening only, so.
I guess. Oh, it is? So there's no video? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, so it wasn't me this time. All right. Hold on then. It wasn't me. Yay. All right. All right.
There are 300 families in the village, and most of them have at least one spoon maker in their ranks. This is one of them.
Hello, my name is Samjit Vanzavat. I'm a spoon maker. I grew up watching my father making spoons, so I followed in his footsteps. I really like making spoons and the lifestyle that comes with it.
Samjit is not just a spoon maker, he's one of the few teachers in the village.
It's a very rural village, and most people here are farmers and hunters.
You might have caught the sound of a rooster. Samjit recorded the interview in his home.
Of course it's my rooster. I've got buffaloes and chickens as well, like everyone else in the village. They are our main source of proteins.
Although he's 35 and therefore too young to remember the war, growing up in Napier, he was surrounded by memories of the conflict.
The war deeply affected my family and the entire village. People were killed or severely injured in the bombings. Their houses were destroyed. Those who survived had to work in the rice fields during the night because working in the daylight was too dangerous. Life was hard. And still nowadays, there are unexploded bombs throughout the countryside around my village. When I was a child, I would go out in the fields to collect shrapnel. My parents didn't want me to do that, but I didn't understand how dangerous it was. One day, I found a little colorful piece of metal. It was as big as a finger, and the top of it had an odd zigzaggy shape. I really liked it, so I took it home and I started playing with it with my friends. It looked so weird and interesting. We decided to open it and find out what it was. We smashed it with a rock and it exploded in our hands. We all survived with minor injuries, but I still get shivers down my spine when I think about it, because I could have died.
When Elizabeth heard Sumsit's story and similar experiences from other villagers, she wanted to raise awareness.
I will tell your story. I will raise awareness about the legacy of war, the legacy of 80 million unexploded bombs in Laos, and I will tell the story of what you're doing to rebuild your community.
Elizabeth looked at the metal, she looked at the spoons, and her inner fashionista started to formulate a plan that would appeal to an international market.
It dawned on me that if they could make spoons, then they could make bracelets. And I would do my best to sell them and to tell this story. And so I proposed the idea. I said, have you made anything besides spoons before? And they said no. So I suggested the bracelet, and I got a look of a bit of skepticism.
At the beginning, we are not convinced, because you see, we have a great market for spoons here in Laos. But who'd be interested in buying bracelets? But Elizabeth said she'd help us find a market for the jewelry. She gave us the design for a bracelet. We tried to make it, but the first one didn't turn out that well. But then we started experimenting with the other materials and shapes, and eventually it worked.
We had our first bracelet, and we called it Peace Bomb. And the idea was to buy back the bombs. We sold our first bracelets with a story card that told the story. It's a piece of history, but it represents love. It represents this human triumph over a very negative past.
If you go to Napier now, there are 15 families making this jewelry.
We work together as a group. First of all, we go out in the fields and collect scrap metals. It used to be quite dangerous, but nowadays we work with experts and only collect material that is safe. We then take the scrap metal to the public furnace. It's an area in the village with several stoves that we used to melt the metal. We then pour it into molds to make jewelry. We let them dry for a while and then we polish them. This business has improved our life. We are better off now that we produce jewelry as well as spoons. We use the money to send our kids to school, to support our family, and to buy mopeds.
Back in the United States, Elizabeth gives talks in schools and universities about Sumsit and his village.
The issue of unexploded ordnance is a humanitarian issue that has consequences for civilians far beyond the end of the war. Each piece is raising funds for a mines advisory group known as MAG to clear some of these 80 million unexploded bombs.
I am very proud I can create something beautiful from nobody that almost killed me. People looked at my jewelry now and think, this is beautiful. They don't think it's dangerous anymore. So yeah, I am the proudest person on earth.
Elizabeth and Jit Phawangsavat. Their company is called Article22.
Elizabeth, I love that, again, that last line, they don't think it's dangerous anymore. And for them too, I mean, it was already happening, and they had to go through also their own, from spoons to bracelets. When you proposed it, they were skeptical, like how could this be, And so you took them in a way on yet another layer of transformation for themselves, which is even in their community now. They're working together as teams. They're seeing the impact with, you know, all the partners and the partnerships and the collaboration. You know, it's like they don't think it's dangerous anymore. I mean, that's just so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's been so important over the years is just the education piece that Minds Advisory Group and UXO Lao and Halo and Norwegian People's Aid, these are all different demining organizations that you know, are clearing the land, but part of their mission is to go into communities and have community liaison, I want to say managers, but community liaison team members who, you know, have posters that explain the issue of unexploded ordnance. I mean, it's mind-boggling to think you walk out your door and you have this potential threat. You know, one gentleman in our film, and this has happened many times since, was just innocently burning his garbage, you know, in the same place he did for months, years even, and it exploded. So the education piece has been such a critical thing since Sumchit's, you know, youth, when there was less knowledge around what these things were. And so, you know, kids might mistake them for a toy. And certainly that still does happen. You know, I think even though the rates of accidents are so much lower than, you know, in the past, I mean, so much lower, there is still that misunderstanding that this little ball is not a bull ball. You know, it's not a toy, it's not a soda can. And so I think that is a very important achievement, as much to some extent as actually clearing the land. We can now actually say that 1% of the land has been cleared, which is an enormous milestone that Legacies of War shared this year. So.
Yeah, thank you for that. I also wonder, you know, you were going to share maybe some testimonials, or
yes,
Catherine, also about, you know, the products and why people buy the jewelry and what their stories are. That would be great.
Yes, actually, Kat, do you want to kind of start off with a few anecdotes?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
So Kat has been working with us for how many years now?
Oh man, approximately 5.
Yeah. And
yeah.
The DC community, you know, has welcomed Article 22 many years at different pop-ups, and she is the regional manager, and she also wears another hat that is not Article 22. So it's truly an incredible effort that she puts into this, and an asset for Article 22. But our holiday markets are a key component of where we sell, and you have many stories.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me tonight. I'm Catherine Walker. I have the fortune of contributing to Article 22 in the Washington, D.C. region. And I'm so lucky. I love our partners, and being in Virginia allows me to physically be with Legacies of War, Lao Heritage Foundation, MAG, etc. So it's a really exciting place to be for me. You might see me pop up at the Washington, D.C. downtown holiday market, or do a pop-up at stores or the National Geographic Museum, for instance. So as you can imagine, we experience a spectrum of connections and reactions. All are emotional and all are very, very important. I've gotten the solemn, yeah, I dropped some of those bombs to people who frequently tell me they don't know about Laos at all. They've never heard of it. But the story of transformation lands with many, with all. So a few examples that have come up. It's not uncommon for us or myself to speak to someone who has lost a loved one during the Vietnam War, which really requires us to be prepared and sensitive around this topic. So you might hear us pivot in how we express the story so that we can adjust to who we're speaking with, because it's a very sensitive time in our history. So for example, one night I was working a gala and this really, really bubbly woman walked up to me. And as we were exchanging about Article 22, she went silent and her eyes started to well with tears. And it was very, very challenging to work through that. But my form of connecting with her was just silence. And we sat there together, we were holding hands. And I just gave her a minute to sort of, I'll say grapple, but process these pieces of history in front of her that had a direct impact on her story, her loved ones. After a couple of minutes, long minutes, she finally gave me a really big hug and decided to get a piece. And I think she really didn't say a whole lot, but I think in her mind, she said, I want a piece to remember that loved one and remember their impact on me, their love, their impact on the world. So I could sort of see her wheels turning as she heard the story of Article 22, learned about that transformation story. So I am forever bonded with that woman. I can see her here right now in front of me. But then I'll also exchange with war protesters. I've talked with people who were arrested during the Vietnam War for protesting. And I know in a couple of weeks when I go out there at a pop-up, somebody will tell me that they're protesting the Ukraine war. And they might say to themselves, wow, Laos, however many years later, is still seeing immense impact from their war. What does that mean for a war today like Ukraine? How long are we going to see those impacts? So maybe if somebody doesn't have a direct connection with the Vietnam War, I've heard new places, new countries, every time I do a pop-up that's impacted by UXO. And so people really get excited or get passionate about it. Article 22 has a lot of messages with our pieces. A very popular one is point forward without forgetting the past. And a lot of people who have emotions around war war connect with that, but also stories of people in recovery, people who might be survivors also connect with that messaging. So just an example of how people really connect in different ways to our pieces. But possibly my favorite experience in the last holiday market in December is I had a former LHF student walk up. I won't say her name because I didn't ask her permission, but she gathered a bunch of people around my tent and told them the story. And what was so interesting is they didn't know it. And she was so thrilled to be answering questions and to be able to share that story. I mean, it was one of my favorite moments. And so it's important for us to really connect with our community because they're sharing the story beautifully in their own ways. So those are a few examples that come to mind tonight.
Beautifully said. Yeah, I mean, I think when the first bracelet sold in 2010, I just had no idea what the reaction would be. You know, on one hand, the artisans themselves were a little bit skeptical, like who would buy this bracelet? And years later, and this will just be a very quick anecdote, I said to our country manager, Manny Vone in Laos, I said, you know, I noticed that a lot of the women in this province are wearing like substantial gold necklaces. And I recognize that, you know, it's not necessarily like the wealthiest area. And she looked at me and said, that's their bank account. And I was like, oh, thinking back to all those years before when the artisan said, who will buy these bracelets? Of course, they were thinking of, you know, jewelry being associated with value that was tangible, you know, gold, you can resell it. It is a currency in a way. But the metal carries this different meaning beyond the sheer value of the material. It's the symbolic aspect of what it means for people. And I think Catherine gave multiple great examples of that notion of transformation and that point forward without forgetting the past. You know, the first woman I made cry, I was also kind of stunned and I felt terrible. It was our very first time selling in a retail context. And she said, I need to get this. I just lost my husband and I want to honor him and remember him, but I have no choice but to move forward. And it had nothing to do with any of the history aspect of things. It had to do with her personal situation. And so, you know, in a weird way, Irina, you asked some beautiful questions. and I don't want to mix things up too much, but you know, I think even for me on a personal basis, it's this idea of transformation is ever present, but sometimes it's really hard on for yourself to realize the need to transform and evolve. And I think when you're running a small business, that's a really difficult thing to figure out, like how to pivot and how to spend your time. So when we get to that point, I'll be happy to elaborate a little more in relation to your
Yeah,
question.
and just to add, it seems like along the way you really have you know, you've met people where they're at, and for yourselves too, you know, Catherine, you're talking about like, what do I do? How do I respond? And just to be there, and to not shirk away, or not to go around, or not be so pointed that the message has to be just this, right? And I think that's just says a lot to you know, everyone involved in the meaning of the jewelry and the selling aspect. It's so much more than selling. It's really there's a conveyance. It's not transactional. It's really transformational, you know, and that's that messaging that you put it out there, and yet people will tell you also, like, this is what I need to hear. This is what I need to experience. And the fact that you and your team out in the field, and, you know, out in the sort of digital space, media space, are meeting people where they're at on a very sensitive topic, right? Yeah, so I appreciate that so much about what you're sharing here as well. One sort of final question in terms of the product that I wanted to hit is you work with the various design partners to make your collections, and I'm curious to know how that came about and how that shaped your business.
Yes, it's, well, first, so beautifully said, and thank you for the compliment. It's one of the reasons why, you know, direct communication in a retail context has been so unbelievably rewarding for us, you know, not only in terms of financially, but also in reassuring us that what we're doing when we don't have those interactions is meaningful in a way that we never could have imagined. I think, you know, we can be very sure about the impact that jewelry makes, but it's harder to know that reaction. And so retail events and even events like this are so gratifying. And that is really a perfect segue into the partnerships that we have from a design perspective. And there really are a few aspects to it that are so important. And the first is that I want the whole world to know about this story, this history, and our jewelry, and what we attempt to do in the process to address that history and create something positive for the future. And the idea of doing design partnerships has been about expanding the audience. You know, it's not just about speaking to people who might already know the backstory. It's about accessing totally new communities. And so that's why when Emma Watson went on the Ellen show and told this story, I mean, we couldn't believe it. I mean, we took a gamble. We sent an intern over to London to hand deliver the pieces because we only had one pair. And we're like, this is the most the company has ever spent on any one single effort. And you're not going to believe it, but the earrings were not in the bag. So when she got to London, they weren't there. She had other pieces, but these were the most important pieces. They had, I mean, we were frazzled. We were crazy. We bought her ticket and she flew at like the next day immediately. And the box had fallen into a messy box in our office. I go to the airport of JFK and I get some incredible woman, after 100 no's, this one incredible woman accepts to take the jewelry and be my jewelry mule. Like, you know how you're not supposed to take things from people? She takes the jewelry. So, okay. Partnerships have been so important, and we've had to take some gambles, and that was a gamble. And to kind of bring that specific Emma Watson story full circle, we're now collaborating with one of her stylists, who is a very big proponent in Los Angeles. She's LA and London based, of sustainable fashion. And she's trying to take what Emma did on the Beauty and the Beast press tour and make it a norm for all of her clients to wear what she considers, you know, sustainable fashion that is light on the environment. And so our jewelry is now in part designed by a woman named Laura Sophie Cox. So again, this is a totally different audience than we've ever had before. Another example of a partner from a design perspective is an incredible artist named Beatrix Ost. You know, she's a much older woman. She's known for her, you know, street style and is often photographed. She's got way more Instagram followers than Article22 will. And she's just a magnificent work of art herself. And so we create incredible snake earrings with her, and her message and mantra is, you know, in your body is a good place to be. And there's no more affirmative message of existence than that. And by the way, Laura's message is shine your light, because it's about the ripple effect that her celebrity clients you know, have on shedding light on the idea of sustainability in fashion. Another design partnership, you know, and maybe this is just the last one to mention. Well, two, Legacies of War. We've created the Trailblazer bangle with them, and then also a new bangle which has hope in 22 languages, including, of course, Lao, Lumian, and Hmong, speaking to the Lao area. And that is a more kind of direct relationship, of course, between the story and the product. But another slightly more direct collaboration is Rebecca Rush. Her father was a Vietnam War vet, shot down in a plane over Laos. And she is an incredible athlete who brings a totally different community to Article22 jewelry. Her father, in his last letter home to his family, you know, in a letter filled with a lot of doubts about what he was doing there in the war, signed off, be good, Steve. And so the message of her collection is be good. And so, you know, our athletes that follow her and, you know, are part of her community, well, that message is clearly a good positive affirmation for their sport, but of course it means something much more layered as well. So the collaborations that we do are, you know, ranging from the artisans in the village to the various nonprofit partners like MAG, Legacies of War, that we have, to people in the fashion and design community who access totally different audiences.
Cool. There's one last video clip. It's the PBS News Hour, which sort of shows the you know, pop up in New York City. I wondered if we might show that. But before that, is there anything else that perhaps didn't come up in this conversation, or I didn't ask, or, you know, it's still on your mind that you really want to be able to communicate, or we can sort of see what the questions are that Dick can field from this point?
Yes, I think the Q&A will be a perfect next step.
Okay. Did you want to see the video clip, the PBS News Hour? Because that's a fun one.
And it's short.
Okay, and it's short. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Next, on what the stores call Black Friday, the unofficial launch of the holiday shopping season. Special correspondent Mike Saray reports on a growing effort to expand the scope of seasonal giving to include charitable causes, with a focus on one company turning bombs into bracelets.
Looking to escape the holiday shopping madness to give something more unique and meaningful this year?
Recycling bombs into jewelry isn't as much about anti-consumerism as it is about buying, making, and selling stuff that benefits others and extends the gratification that comes from gift giving beyond the holidays.
The Love is the Bomb pieces, I believe, are $185. People are shopping for holiday gifts that they're gonna give to somebody that they love or that they care about. And the jewelry that we offer is a symbol of that love, both in terms of it being a gift, but in terms of the story that it carries.
I surprised my wife.
Charlie Decker discovered the story and Article 22's holiday booth in New York's Union Square and bought a matching set of wedding rings made from bombs to give something back this holiday season.
Hoping that, all the wounds get healed, and this is our little piece that we had to play in it.
For the PBS NewsHour, Mike Saray reporting from New York.
Elizabeth, thank you so much, and Catherine too for jumping in at earlier. And we'll hand it over to Tick, who can field some questions. I see a lot coming in on the chat. Thank you so much for this. It's been really fun.
Thank you, Lulu.
Wow. So I kind of know the story about Article 22, but I really didn't know the story of Article 22. So we are so excited to have you here today and to share all of the details and all of that went into it. What an amazing story. So we're so excited to have you here. We do have a few questions that are on the chat. I think I forgot to introduce myself. I do that a lot. My name is Nipa Sansapom. I am actually the president of the Lao Heritage Foundation, but I like to be known as just the person in the background. So let's start off with our first question is from Arena, which Elizabeth had already kind of alluded to earlier. And she asked two questions, actually. One is, what are some of the, hold on one second. I lost it. Sorry, 1 second. Here we go. I apologize. Actually, Arita, would you like to ask your question? While I look.
My question was, let's see, what were the greatest learning lessons during the time since you started? And then the second one was, were there any moments during the lifespan of Article 22 when you doubted yourself, and how did you overcome these moments?
There are so many, so I will try to keep it concise. I mean, one thing certainly I learned from you, Arena, of your time at Legacies of War. I mean, Arena was there when President Obama came to Laos, and she was, a master communicator behind the whole operation. I mean, it was a feat. And certainly the importance of team is just a critical piece of this. And we've always been very, very lucky to have incredibly committed team members, storytellers. So the idea of not doing things alone, it definitely is a key component, and really knowing like where your personal strengths are as an entrepreneur, and then recognizing the individual strengths of each team member and how that all really goes together. Catherine's my organizational part of my brain, for example. Tick also, wow. But, I think one very concrete point here is that, like weapons industry as of 2020, I think was worth something like 531 billion. And the jewelry industry is worth, let me look at my notes, in 2019, 330 billion. So weapons, 531 billion, and jewelry, 330 billion. You know, the market's fierce. Like, I only wish that we could feel like we were chipping away at any portion of that. You know, the size of Article 22, despite the incredible achievements that we've made, that I'm so proud of, thanks to our team over the years, you know, we're still small and we're ambitious. And I think that's probably been one of the hardest things, is to have incredible patience, just not being able to do what you want to do at the speed that you want to do it. And, you know, having like big budget constraints to execute on things that you know are so good and so important. And I think that, you know, at times it's even like taken a personal toll. And one thing since having a child is that I've really been trying on a personal basis to have better work-life balance. And so I think, like, as a mom, that probably may not have been the answer that you were looking for, but, you know, I saw Sheryl Sandberg step down from Facebook today, and, you know, you all remember her book, Lean In, and it's just not really like that. Maybe if you are Sheryl Sandberg and you have a team of nannies, maybe it is, but it's hard. It takes a, you know, whole community to raise children. And I think that's something that's so special about what Lao Heritage Foundation is all about. It's about that community aspect of raising children. And like, Laos is so much more than the secret war, you know, and the legacy of unexploded ordnance. And so what you do to celebrate that, I think, is just amazing. And so, yes, I think on a very personal basis, my personal transformation has been around better balancing work life and trying to get better at saying no to things. Because I've definitely, I think Article 22, our team has overextended ourselves at times, and you feel it when you execute at a C level and not like your A game. So I don't know if that's specific enough, but I think that those challenges are ever present for everybody, no matter what you do. But for Article 22, especially after COVID, it's been kind of like redefining how we work and not being scared to say, we're going to maybe do fewer retail events, but when we do our holiday period in October, November, and December, we're going to do it big. That would be one example, very concretely from a business perspective. We make less since COVID overall, but we've gotten to a point of being a bit more profitable. So that was a very difficult transition to make after COVID. And I think we'll get back to the level we were once at, but figuring out how to do that in a way that's like embracing the human resources that we have in the right way and an unstressed way is, you know, a key component. And any small organization faces that challenge.
Thank you. So we also have a question from Julie, and her question is, what is the metal comprised of?
Yes, so it is aluminum. And that aluminum is a mix of what is considered war scrap metal and non-war scrap metal. The war scrap metal can be so many different things. We never know like exactly what the composition is. It could be the fin of a cluster bomb. If you've ever seen the one like that's a pineapple and it has, you know, kind of like the fins coming out at the top, both the bottom of that and the top of that are aluminum. Casings of cluster munitions. So a cluster munition case could be as tall as I am, and have 300 bombs inside of it. And those cases sometimes are light and have been used as canoes. So they're find multiple purposes in Laos. There are also sometimes like pieces of tanks that were aluminum, like mufflers, select parts of guns. So it's a range of war scrap material. And then the non-war scrap material is an important part of this, because one thing we never ever wanted to do was put any pressure on the supply chain and increase the demand for the material. That would then potentially make it more attractive for people to engage in dangerous collection activity. So we completely embrace mixing other aluminum scrap material in as well.
So what percentage of the actual product is is actually from the scrap metals from the
You know, it's always a mix. It could be 50-50, it could be 60-40, it could be 80-20. Like it's a total mix.
I actually have a question from my son. I said, when he's 13, and I said, Arun, you should really join the conversation and you should ask it yourself. He says, no, but I do want you to ask this question. And he says, well, where does the name Article 22 come from? She said, is it a law? Is it, he was like asking me all these things. And I said, I don't know. That is a great question. I'm going to ask. So
it is a great question. And tell him thank you. It is from the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That was drafted in 1948 with Eleanor Roosevelt as the head of the Human Rights Commission. And it was after World War II. And the Human Rights Commission had the ambitious goal of trying to get the leading countries to unite around, how they define human rights. And so this Declaration of Human Rights is just that. And Article 22 specifically for me is everything that is wonderful about the world from an ideal perspective. Like, we all have rights to social, economic, cultural security and the free development of personality. And it's up to us to work together to protect those things. So I thought it's a lot to explain for a jewelry company, but it's a whole lot better than my name, like Elizabeth Suda Jewelry. So.
Wow. And I think that the name fits quite well with your impact, your mission, and the things that you do. I think it encompasses and explains it all. But I don't think I ever heard like the reasoning behind that name. So I'm glad we asked that question.
And I'm a nerd, I studied history. I'm not even that good at remembering facts and figures, but I was always a fan of Eleanor Roosevelt. So it's just like also a matter of my fangirling.
Definitely so. So are there any other questions that comes up? Because I do have a million questions of my own, but I would like other people to have an opportunity to ask as well. So one of my questions, so since nobody's volunteering, notice I didn't give any wait time. We have another one?
I think there was someone actually.
Okay. Let's see. Did I miss it?
We can hear though. Oh, I can hear.
Okay. You can come off a mute and ask whoever it was. That was Tootie?
Yes.
All right. See?
I wasn't sure if I had to.
No, you can just go ahead and ask Tootie.
So I just wanted to say thank you so much for all that you do to help, the Lao people heal through jewelry, every effort that you put in. So it's just really to see. My question, I have a couple questions. First off, I saw that Catherine posted there was going to be a pop-up DC area. Are there any planned pop-ups throughout the country?
Oh my gosh, tell us where to go and we'll be there. We'll do our best. Where are you based?
I'm Bay Area.
Okay, I know we really need to get out there. So far at the moment, no. but please, I will put my email in here. And if there are any particular events that you're aware of, holiday markets happen to be a very seasonal thing that we do. There's a captive audience. People frantically need gifts. So I don't know if there's anything like that in San Francisco, but it could be something that we could plan around.
Yes, I have friends who, have online businesses. They sell arts and crafts and things like that, and they attend artisan fairs. So that would be something that I would like to help out with as well.
That would be amazing. And yes, if people are already doing this, we have, meaning that they're connected to markets as you describe. I'm totally open to sending some inventory out on consignment and working something out like that. So we've absolutely done that in the past, and it's been successful, very successful, in particular in Chicago where we tried it. So I'm putting my email in there.
Okay, great. And there are a couple pieces I'm eyeing already. I'm going to purchase. Are there any stores selling these things in Laos, like near the tourist destinations?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one of my dreams would be to have our own storefront. We haven't gone there yet. It feels intimidating, but we also recognize that there is a significant opportunity. For the moment, there's one particular store in Luang Prabang called Queen Design Lao. It happens that it's run by an Australian woman. And I think she's slowly kind of rebuilding things after COVID. So, we do need to kind of check in with her to see how things are going. But there are some plain pieces that are traded in the markets under the tents in Luang Prabang. It doesn't have our impact and like the whole kind of packaging, but that does occasionally happen where traders will go to the village, and they're really usually creating things that are more geared towards like that sort of market environment. So they're quite different often from what we sell and how things are finished. Oops.
You're muted, Tootie.
Sorry. If you can put in the chat the name of the store in Laos, that'd be great. So.
Yes, I will.
All the questions I have. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I would like to do a shout out for Cassie. She's going to donate $2,000 on behalf of Laos in the House in honor of National Children's Day for the Actabu Project. Oh, yay, Cassie. Elizabeth. Wow, Cassie. Woohoo.
Maybe Cassie can do some rap for us.
Yeah. So we are so excited. So that kind of brings us back to also the purpose of the reason why we're also doing this, besides those wonderful story and all the history that we're learning about Elizabeth and all the great wonderful things that she's doing with Laotian jewelry, is also the fact that we are also raising funds tonight to support a new project in Attapeu, Laos. We are in the midst of, trying to get funding for this project, but LHF decided that we're not going to wait. We're going to start raising our own funding for it so that we can have this project going, because it is an area of need, especially in the southern part of Laos. As I said, it's most of the time a lot of money goes into Luang Prabang because everybody knows Luang Prabang, right? It's a tourist attraction. But as you go further south, the further south you go, the less people know about, the less tourists, and there's less support down in those areas. And LHF has always been wanted to go down south in Laos, but we haven't had the ability or the capability or capacity to do so. And we are at this point where we feel that this is the right time for us to work down to the south. And we decided on Attapeu, as it is, one of those area that has been heavily affected, especially from the flooding and the dams in 2018, and that community has been devastated and trying to rebuild. And we said, what would be a better way to bring that community together, provide some hope for the children and also for the community itself to, be surrounded by music and culture and to bring that back alive again. So that's one of the things that we are doing tonight, is to raise funds for that. So we are really excited to have that project. It is in the works and it will be into the summer of 2015. And we invite everyone to come. All of our projects are free and open to the public, and all of our project in Laos is fully funded by all of our donors, generous donors who makes it happen. So LHF provides all of that programming free to all the children in Laos. We would provide them with teachers as well as instruments, which will be donated to the Children Cultural Center in Atapu. So we have connected with the Children Culture in Atapu, and we're really, really excited to get started, and they are really excited about that as well. So yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Katsi, for that generous donation from Laos in the House. We're so excited. So went off on a tangent. It says,
That's not a tangent. That's a core mission of tonight. That is.
Yes, yes, it definitely is. So we definitely appreciate that. And besides that, we want to thank all the donors who have donated actually through Eventbrite as well, who were not able to make it or are here tonight. So we really definitely appreciate all those people who are donating through Eventbrite, as well as purchasing jewelry from Article 22. So we're really, really excited about that. So talking about the jewelry itself, one of the things I'm always curious about, besides the artisan from Laos, who are the people, who's the designer? Like, who actually designed? I know some of your jewelry has some of the stories that I've read about, like, the people that have inspired you to actually create those pieces. But I was always curious in terms of who actually does the designing of the jewelry from Article 22.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So a lot of it is me, but it's also very much a collective effort. A few pieces of our best-selling necklaces that have a lotus flower, which is a message about adversity, a sundial, shine your light, and a Hamsa sign. That was actually a contribution from 3 different interns that we have. That was a little project that our operations manager hosted and challenged the interns to come up with those. So there are those few pieces that are special, that have those interns have made a mark on the company, because those pieces sell very well. If sometimes we do things that are limited edition, we can't have every piece we ever made, but so that's one answer. And then a lot of it is me, because it actually took a lot of figuring out how to finish the jewelry in ways that were going beyond engraving messages. We wanted to take a step above, okay, the bangles. So how do we make earrings? And something that's very interesting about aluminum is that it's not like silver. It doesn't tarnish, it doesn't oxidize, which is a fantastic feature. For people who are allergic to nickel and sterling silver, it's hypoallergenic. But there's a big but. It's actually difficult to work with once it's cast. You can't solder it. You can't connect another piece of metal to it with heat and this special solder. So I'm always, to some extent, involved in the creative design aspect of things, either entirely for certain pieces, or just as more of like the engineer, kind of figuring out how things go together. So the Emma Watson earrings and every other pair of earrings we've ever made have a hole drilled all the way through the precious silver or gold that is the cap of the earring. Maybe it's a little difficult to see, but if you go on the website, you'll see a precious piece of metal at the base of the earring where it goes in your ear, and that gets drilled through the aluminum, and then it's basically secured by soldering the pin into the precious metal that's pierced all the way through. So that was a very complicated answer, but it took a really long time to figure out how we could kind of evolve the craft. And we work with an incredibly talented artisan in Vientiane, who does a lot of the finishing for the silver and the gold. And then we also do work with a few artisans in New York City's Diamond District. And for me, it's a real point of pride to be able to bring expertise from, you know, two different places together in our whole jewelry collection.
Wow, that's so cool. So have any of the, so I'm just curious because, you know, the people, the villagers, we have a couple of questions, but since I get to ask my questions first, right? So the people of the villages, they started with the spoons, right? Have any of them ever approached you with a design or an idea of their own? Because they're, you know, because they're the one who's producing all of this jewelry, right? That the designs and that you have brought forth and your ideas. I'm just curious if there's ever any of them have ever.
You know, so I would say their ideas are around like problem solving. So the aesthetic sometimes ends up based out of what can be done and what
Yes.
can't be done. So what hasn't really happened is, for example, somebody coming and say like, I want to make a snake earring. Our partner Beatrix Ost, whose snake earring we sell, you know, like that came from a model of her personal earring. And so that sort of thing hasn't really happened. But there's no doubt that, you know, like working with the artisans in kind of engineering and figuring out how to make more elaborate pieces has completely impacted like the overall aesthetic and the design. And then I would just like to say that, you know, like they make specific pieces that do appeal to either like a local market that are significant, like a little elephant statue, for example, and that's something that might sell at the Luang Prabang market. So it's good because they, you know, they have additional income sources, including the spoon, as well as Article 22.
So here is another question. It says, has Article 22 ever been approached about expanding to other areas in Laos?
No one has specifically approached us. Always up for a conversation. It's definitely part of the ambition we have for Article 22. One of those things that we have to just be patient about. So I'm all ears if you want to email me. But I will say that we do really try to work with diverse artisans, and that includes paper makers who make the posa paper from the bark that kind of renews itself, and then weavers in Vientiane who weave our pouch packaging since, you know, the beginning, and then of course the silver and gold smiths as well. But no, the answer is other than that, no.
So I guess that leads to the next question that actually Catherine kind of put in there, which is what you already led into, was how does Article 22 pull impacts in various ways, like for your pouches, your packaging, and your employment. So besides, I guess, you know, the actual artisan that works and creates the jewelry, right? There are other artisans in Laos that you do partner with, that you do impact. So can you expand a little bit more in terms in those areas?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is like it would feel so strange to create this incredible like handmade jewelry that has this hand feel to it and then put, you know, some sort of sterile packaging on it. And that would also be misaligned from our mission, which is which is multifold, but which includes making an impact in as many ways just through investing in people's talent. And that's the thing, like if you really want something unique, you don't go to Amazon, you know, you find your Article 22s and your Lulu's company. I'm so sorry, I'm forgetting the name, the lion.
Indigo
Lion,
handmade.
yeah.
Indigo lion, indigo, exactly. Like indigo is such a special thing that Laos does, in addition to other parts of the world, as you so eloquently describe on your website, Lulu. You know, like you feel the person behind, I hope, our products through the packaging and through the jewelry itself. To me, that's completely critical aspect of putting something out there into the world. Like, yes, it does help do those things, but it's also, at the end of the day, if that aluminum needed to be melted back down, that paper is going to biodegrade, that cotton is going to biodegrade. Like, it is a sustainable product as much as possible.
Wow, that's awesome. So we do actually have, Kendall has a question in the design side, and she says, what are some of your inspiration for the jewelry design? She says she's loving Kat's earrings, and I do too.
Oh, Kendall, thank you for opening the door. No, so this was inspired by the gold leafing in a temple in Luang Prabang, and I'm sorry, in Wat Sisaket in Vientiane. And it's not the exact motif, but it's inspired by that. And so in that particular case, we really are always trying to like stretch our capacity. So that was a plate that was cast in the village through the regular method of using the molds. And then here in upstate New York, actually, we sent that plate to a company that was able to laser cut the pieces out of the elaborate design. So the design itself was really inspired by the shapes and kind of uniqueness of that Lao temple, but then merged with like a very, very modern approach to finishing.
Wow, that is so awesome. Do we have any more questions? There's a comment from Shumita, and I would love to read this one because I think this is really cool. It says, I love the story of Article 22 and enjoy today's event so much. I just ordered 2 bracelets. As a woman from India, I have enjoyed many kinds of jewelry, but this time will be different. I'm sorry, I have so many things going on here.
What will the sound make? What will the sound make?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Cat.
What will the sound make when I wear them? She says.
Well, it's hard to hear actually, Kat, but yes, we say it's the sound of peace. No, it is almost a little bit like a wind chime.
Yeah, she says, and to carry the story on my body as an American woman. Wow, thank you. So
thank you for the comment and for the donation to Legacies and supporting us. I mean, Lao Heritage. Thank you.
And Elizabeth Edmund Arena. At Elizabeth, check out Done Good so you can reach out to other audiences in the marketplace that can be made. So I will share and I will save all of these messages for you as well so that you'll have all these stuff. But we have lots and lots of messages and notes and things. Is there anybody who would like to come off of mute? We have about like 3 minutes left of our event, but we would love to hear from you, our audience, directly of any comments, any questions, of anything you would like to say. So, and again, you know, I'm really, really thankful that Elizabeth and Catherine agreed to have this event with us. You know, we've known Article 22 for a while now. We have done events together, but, you know, I was like, you know, there's always something missing. I really never really know Article 22. I think it would be so great just to see and just to hear and just to learn your story. And, you know, I am so excited that you agreed because they're like, you think she is so busy? And I said, yeah, I know, right? But I am so thankful that you had shared your story with us tonight. And, and it's such a wonderful story, of hope, of healing, of inspiration. So we really, really thank you. And we want to thank everyone for joining us today. And I hope you learned something today or got inspired or got some cool jewelry, because I am going to order some for myself. I have to say I ordered tons of jewelry the last time I saw Catherine, and all for other people. But you know what? I don't have one for myself. So I need to order some for myself. And Catherine was like, how many are you ordering? I'm like, 20. I'm just like, what? So I cleared out her whole store, but none of them were for me, Catherine. So I got to order some for myself tonight. So
Thank you so much for having me. And I mean, your platform is a tight-knit community. And so it's truly an honor to be here. And I'm so grateful to Catherine for keeping that kind of in-person physical relationship, thriving, because we can't be in multiple places at the same time, not yet anyway. So I'm really grateful for that, and to meet all of you, and really truly always up for suggestions. So please do use my email if you feel inspired to ask a question or if you have an idea.
And I wanted to put out there that the promo Heritage 10 is for 2 weeks, right? It's from starting today until the 15th. So there's remind me again, Catherine will know it, 10% off, and then Catherine, you'll
yes.
Off, and then 15% donation to LHF. Yeah.
Wonderful. So there's still time to buy incredible jewelry and give to some good causes. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to Lulu for being such a wonderful moderator and host as well.
What a great conversation. Thank you, everyone.
Great conversation. Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Good night. Thank you.
See you all here.
Bye.